All right, hello and welcome to our webinar hosted by Ledgeview Partners. For those that have been on our webinars in the past, I want to say welcome back, and for all of you newcomers, it's nice to virtually meet you. Thank you so much for giving us your time today to learn about planning for CRM success. My name is Julia Flaherty, and I am the marketing coordinator at Ledgeview Partners. We are a business and technology firm who partners with organizations to transform sales, marketing, and customer service operations and processes that are supported by core technologies, including customer relationship management, CRM, and marketing automation. Before I introduce today's presenter, I just have a couple quick housekeeping items to cover. First of all, today's webinar is being recorded and will be available on demand after the live session. All attendees will receive a follow-up email after the webinar is complete with a link to access the presentation. We encourage you to share this within your company and your professional networks. To ensure the best audio quality, we have everyone on listen-only mode, but if you do have a question or comment, please submit those in the question pane of your GoToWebinar control panel. And now that that's out of the way, it's my pleasure to introduce today's topic and presenter. When it comes to planning for CRM success, there's a lot to consider, which you will discover in today's webinar. From defining your vision for CRM, to selecting the right partner, to establishing your plan, to keeping up the momentum, and much, much more. We at Ledgeview want to set you up to achieve a home run with your CRM implementation and continuous success. But I'll let Jody dive deeper into that. Whatever CRM system you're using, the pro tips shared in today's webinar will be amazing takeaways for you and your team. Jody Gilroy, Senior Business Analyst at Ledgeview Partners, comes with impressive expertise and experience creating dynamic marketing plans for companies across a variety of industries. She's a marketing guru whose clear passion and intelligence in the marketing field shines. And now it is time to welcome her. Jody, thank you for being here. I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Julia, for the introduction, and welcome everyone to our Planning for CRM Success. Let's just dive right into the topic today and get started. All right, so what are we going to learn today? The objectives of today's presentation are really to educate you on tips for a successful CRM deployment and or upgrade. I would love you to leave here today with a solid understanding of what project stages you would go through for a successful deployment, and start thinking about what actions to take so that you really do avoid those project failures and realize the ultimate ROI that you're looking for in the implementation of CRM. So around that, we are going to focus our discussion today around characteristics of successful projects. And I do want to point these 4 key attributes right out on the onset. One is a successful project always has strong leadership involvement from the start of the project through the implementation and then from the ongoing usage. Leadership needs to be involved in the project, understand what it will do for the organization, and be the cheerleader for that. Next is planning, and we're going to talk a lot about planning today, and it really is such a core milestone to the success of a CRM project. User adoption, obviously. You can build a great system if people aren't using it. You're certainly not going to see that ROI that we're hoping to have. And how communication plays into this. So those are some of the topics. And I'm hoping, as Julia mentioned, that you're going to walk away with some actions that you can apply right away in your project planning. So Benjamin Franklin wisely said, "By failing to prepare, you're preparing to fail." And that is why at Ledgeview, we really take those words to heart. And it's part of our overall philosophy or process that we go through with all of our clients, whether that be a CRM implementation, whether it be, marketing plans development. It's all about first the process and then the technology. And we'll walk you through this project journey today. Right now we're going to be kind of in step 1, answering the what and the why through the analysis stages. So as we talk about planning for CRM success, we'll focus on 3 key project stages. They're going to be analysis, design, and implementation. Now, let's be honest, we could easily have a session dedicated to each of these stages, and a lot more can be covered in each of them, but we're going to highlight a few of the key activities in each stage that are crucial to project success. So analysis, what is that? That is where your vision is defined. This is the what and the why. Here we focus on high-level planning, focusing on near-term and really long-term as well. Know what problems you're trying to solve. We'll be spending quite a bit of time on this stage compared to the others, because the better you do here, the easier and more successful the others will be. You just keep building upon that framework. Now, design is the detailed planning for short-term, like phase 1 roadmap. How are we going to use the technology to get to our future state? That's what design encompasses. And then implementation. This is essentially the build stage. This is where we do the system configuration, customization, migrations, integrations, testing, and training. It's tempting with a new piece of software at your disposal. You get your Dynamics 365 license and you want to jump right into the build stage. But this rarely works unless maybe the CRM is just being used as a Rolodex, and I doubt that's the investment that you intend to make. So whether you're deploying an enterprise level system or a systems for a small business, it's essential to properly plan. So regardless of whatever project stage we're in, any good project, first and foremost, starts with a good project team. Let's review what makes up a good team. So what is the purpose of the team? The team is really to foster buy-in from the top down. You must have that buy-in because user adoption is directly related to their involvement in the project. So the team has to foster that amongst all users that will be using the system, whether they are today or they will be in the future. Your team should consist of representatives from all areas of the company that eventually will have touch points to CRM, even if it's beyond phase 1. Because again, we're in a planning phase, essentially at the beginning. So as we're defining the what and the why and the vision, make sure you have representation from all applicable areas of your company. So is that sales? Is it customer service? Is it marketing? Is it technical service? What is it that may have a touch point to CRM at some point? Involve them early on. The team helps to facilitate better understanding of requirements. What does the system need to do? And they are really responsible for project success. Now, this team will serve different purposes at various points in the project, but they'll be involved in the planning, the design and requirements gathering, testing, rollout, go live, and then really post go live support for the continued enhancement of the system and changes that may need to be made. Now, the size of your team can vary. Really depends on the size of your company or org structure and really the size of this potential project. So we'll look at in just a bit here a couple different sample project team sizes and how you might want to structure them within your organization. Now, when it comes to the team, these are common roles that we see. And really, it's important as you're picking members for the team that they have a wide range of knowledge, experience, aptitude, and attitude as well towards the project. So typically, teams will have could have a steering committee. There always should be an executive sponsor as well, or a project sponsor. Team captain, who's really the champion and the go-to person day-to-day on the project, subject matter experts, and then again, kind of that cross-functional, cross-department user group of people, and IT as well. And as I mentioned, kind of the attributes that make up a good team, there's some questions maybe to ask yourself as you're evaluating who would be a good fit. Does this person have good overall knowledge of the company and or specific areas of the company around vision, strategy, goals, the industry itself? Are they open-minded to change and process improvement? Do they have time to dedicate to the project? And do they have a good overall rapport with the users that they'll be working with to rally that support? So here's an example of what I would consider a large project team structure. At the helm, we have our project sponsor, or sometimes sponsors. This tends to be an executive level on larger projects and within bigger companies. And then we'll typically branch off and have a business project lead and an IT project lead. Business project really pushing the business requirements, IT focusing and managing the IT requirements of the system. So it's good to get both perspectives. In the IT project, we'll have a few allocated IT members to report up and provide that influence on the IT side. On the business project lead side, you would have potentially multiple business units. Again, understanding what the scope of a CRM implementation may be for the organization in multiple phases. So an example here is we might have a sales project lead, a marketing project lead, and a customer service project lead that are representative of that business unit. And then underneath there, core representatives. So I'm again using the example of the sales project lead. They may have appointed a sales manager, and then like a district manager, a regional manager, and maybe then an international sales manager, so that we have representation across the group and management levels versus day-to-day sales reps. Now, for smaller projects, we certainly don't need too many hands in the pot, right? So not as many stakeholders involved here. And here's an example of kind of smaller team structure that we typically see. So project sponsor. And again, the project sponsor's role is really to champion the project, but maybe not as involved in the day-to-day of the project. They kind of get the updates and kind of do the overall oversight, but really those project leads are the core go-tos on the project. So here it's still recommended a business unit project lead and an IT project lead, and then those allocated team members to get them involved early on and help them give the input so that you're building a system that's meant for them. All right, so project team pitfalls. So, as consultants, we have had the opportunity to work with many companies on various sizes and operational structures and different project sizes too. During these projects, we've seen the gamut of project teams and wanted to share a few pitfalls that can hamper a project team and really the overall CRM project. So these are things just to watch out for. We looked at a couple hierarchies there in those last two slides, but you're gonna have to look across your teams and figure out what is the right fit for your project going forward. But here's some things to keep in mind. It's a balance between too small and too large. So if we go too small with our selection, you're not getting that representation of the needs across the organization. And if you don't involve enough people at the onset, you're going to see lower user adoption. And really that primarily relates to you didn't get enough input at the beginning of the project to know what the user really needed. And if the system isn't configured to user needs, they're going to see lower user adoption. Now, too large, we all been in those rooms, right? Where you have just one too many people around the table, one too many opinions, and it's just way too much. Meeting scheduling is hard because how do we align, 15 people on a project for one meeting? Things that will really slow things down. And also, too, it can lend to lack of ownership. Too many people, they feel like, oh, so-and-so's taking care of it, and I don't really need to give my input, and that can be hard as well. So it's about finding that balance between the two. Projects that are too IT heavy. So this is a business, CRM is a business application, and as such, it should be built from the business side because it involves business process. So I apologize for any of the IT folks on the phone. You certainly have a role in this project, but you have to get the day-to-day users requirements and processes laid out so the system's built around that. So if we have a very heavy team of all IT and really no business representation, that tends to not really go too well. This happens from time to time, probably not a ton, but if your organization is prone to this is something you'll want to just kind of have a watch out for. But the executive sponsor, the one that sits on the helm of the project, is micromanaging. So that can happen, and what it does is just create some conflict within the group if that's a very dominant personality and they're controlling exactly what they want and that only what they want and not what the team needs. That can create some pitfalls in the project too. Choosing team members that have no time. So we're all under a crunch when it comes to that, but try to pick team members that can be dedicated and will dedicate to the project so that we can, get the best output available. And then consistency in project team. Look for those team members that are in it for the duration, through the analysis, through design, through implementation, ideally through all of phase 1. And then if we have an upcoming phase 2 or phase 3, that there's consistently, at least with several team members across that. Because if you're always starting out with a brand new project team every time, well, your partner or whomever maybe your project leads are there, it's good to have a few other team members that can move across those phases. All right, so let's jump in now that we team selected and we're moving into the analysis portion of a project. So this is, again, you've heard me say it a couple of times now, but the what and the why within your organization. It's very easy to start focusing on technology right away in a CRM project because it is technology. However, at this stage, don't focus on technology. The technology shouldn't define your process. Your business need and your processes should. So, and as you can see, and I think I showed this slide earlier, but this is Ledgeview's project approach, and this is step number 1, is defining your what and why. So what should you do to define this? What does this mean? We recommend beginning with documenting your current state. So when we're doing this with our clients, we interview team members and really find out what is the day in the life of that person or that team. So if it's a sales manager, what does your day look like? How are you interacting with your customers? How are you setting appointments? How are you following up with your leads? How are you following up with your contacts? Talking through that, what are the bottlenecks in your day? What are the bottlenecks in the processes that you encounter on a day-to-day basis? You want to document these key processes that could be impacted by the CRM implementation. We recommend actually laying out these processes on a map as part of your documentation overall. This is critical because we will continue to use the example of this, the sales process. Just because CRM has the technology to manage a sales process, if you don't have a solid process to begin with, the technology won't automatically fix that. So engaging in a CRM project is a good opportunity to further define and fill those gaps, and then use the technology to manage that process. So if sales process is going to be an item that we're implementing in the CRM in the design implementation, you want in analysis, map that out, understand the stages and steps that your teams go through so that the technology can align to that. In addition, while you're completing this exercise, you want to focus on uncovering obstacles and inefficiencies in your process. And you can do that by keeping these questions at the top of your mind. Ask them, what processes are taking too much time? What do your users complain about or simply just ignore doing? Like, oh, so Tom does it, but the other 5 don't do it. Exactly. So check that out, and then ask yourself, if you find that's going on, does that process really add value to the organization? If 4 other people aren't doing it and only 1 are, do you even need it? Which processes are inefficient or maybe too manual? Which ones are too complex? Which just don't make sense for the organization anymore? Maybe, it was something you did 15 years ago and it's in some kind of standard and we continue to do it, but do we really need it? It's a good cleansing exercise. So in addition to that, as you're uncovering the current state, you should also document the business requirements for the future state of the CRM implementation. So this is an opportunity as you're talking through these, the current and the challenges maybe that you're going through is, if it could do this, that would save Sally some time. So let's document that. All right, so in addition to process definition, you will also want to do an upfront inventory of the technology being used in the organization. So I know I said process first, technology second. I'm still kind of talking process here. because this is just an assessment of what you have from a technology perspective. So this is doing an inventory of the systems that are currently being used, who's using those systems, and what processes are supported as part of those systems. How often are they using that system? Does that system have the potential to integrate with CRM? ERPs are a good example of that. Identify opportunities for improvement or consolidation of system usage. And what I'm going to show you next is the creation of a current state technology map. So here's an example of a current state technology map. It's about visually putting this down on paper. This can be very eye-opening to organizations to see the amount of technology being used if you haven't ever done this before. You're identifying what it's being connected to, what it isn't connected to, and where there's repetitive systems being used. We see that a lot. There's been a lot of siloed technology acquisition within departments, and you find out that sales is using this and marketing is using this, and really they could both be using one system. So this gives you that visual, and we're going to talk a little later about future state mapping. Now, this is another important piece of an analysis that should be completed prior to design and implementation of a project. And this is what I guess have tagged the CRM Reality Check. If your company has implemented a CRM in the past, you need to have a reality check to ask yourself, why was the past CRM implementation unsuccessful? Document and understand the past to avoid a repeat of this in the future. In addition, if your staff has used CRM systems at a previous employer, you'll want to understand their positive as well as negative experiences. Especially if key users have had negative experiences, this will be a hurdle to user adoption. So you want to identify their objections up front and also learn from those experiences as you move into your individual design. I'll be honest, we see this quite a bit. We have companies, Ledgeview supports both Salesforce and Dynamics. And so we'll have companies that come to us and they're like, Salesforce isn't working for us. So let's implement Dynamics. Okay. These are both top CRM systems. So the systems themselves work, but it's most likely the processes that were put into place for the use of the technology. So we really always, caution those companies before we just dive into another application to go through this process and really cleanse and understand and know what the system needs to do for you before actually implementing another system. All right, now that you have a complete and accurate picture of current state, you want to start on your future state definition. You're continuing to define the what and the why here. And these are really identifying what the business drivers are for your project. What are you trying to achieve? A few business drivers that clients have had that have come to us, they might be looking for system consolidation, sales growth, support upcoming or recent acquisitions of other companies. Maybe they have new leadership and new initiatives coming down the pipeline and they need to support that. It could be a drive for better analytics, productivity, a way to standardize their processes and their data. There's lots of reasons why, and there could be multiples. So it's important for you to define what are your goals? What is the gap you currently have in reaching those goals? What is the role that the CRM solution has in filling those gaps? And what does your future state technology map look like? So we're going to look at that here in a second, as I alluded to earlier. Make it visual, draw it, understand it, see how it's going to improve. And ultimately, why are you implementing, upgrading, or enhancing CRM? Collectively answer this as a group, and that equals your CRM vision. So as I noted, these are in a planning phase. This is a glimpse, right? This is a glimpse at what the future state roadmap will look like. As you build process mapping too, you'll have a glimpse into what your future state processes will be as they're supported by CRM. But the technology map will give you a sense for where will we consolidate systems, Where are we going to minimize manual processes? Where are we going to have integrations in the future? And overall, if you lay side by side your current state map and your future state technology map, the future state should look a lot cleaner and more streamlined. All right, roadmap and budget. So which one comes first, budget or roadmap? Roadmap or budget? I'm presenting roadmap first and then budget. One deliverable of an analysis engagement, or the stages of an analysis, is budget definition. However, sometimes you have a budget that can dictate the roadmap, thus which one comes first. And it can vary, but identify what it is for your organization and plan accordingly. In an analysis phase, you should at least in phase one have a very crystal clear understanding of what you're going to include in that phase one roadmap. And then phase two, some high levels, and then phase three, and then what I would typically then I just put it like a future stage bucket. And those are some other enhancements that you would plan to do or needs you want to address for the organization. In phase one, it's important. Sometimes there's just so much opportunity, but you really want to prioritize and start small. Be basic. Set goals that are obtainable, and they're not going to blow the budget or the effort involved within your organization. So really focus phase one on those quick wins and keep it simple. That also lead to better user adoption initially. When you're setting your roadmap as well, you want to set realistic project timelines. Identify factors that could impact the project timeline, such as retiring of existing systems, your internal resources, that project team, what's their availability. When we look at that phase one roadmap, if we're looking to launch in the summer, is that a good time for your organization? Or is that your busy season? Is it better for the fall? If so, let's bump that out. So it's looking at that as well so that you have a very good system launch. What is the training maybe too? Sometimes we see this often is around, once a year, organizations have national sales meetings. And if this is being rolled out for their sales team, that might impact your deadline and your timeline around that project. So look at that too. Overall, just remember to be patient. Don't be too aggressive on the first, rollout on the gate unless there's a very valid business reason to do so. Be dedicated to getting the project done on time, on budget, and within scope. If we found, when we talk about pitfalls, when projects extend too long, it does jeopardize user adoption as well as the project budget. So it's better to launch phase projects than to extend one phase too long. This will also help with setting expectations, fostering user adoption, and users will perceive that this is well thought out and planned and not just on a whim, like, oh, we've implemented CRM today, here you go. So you kind of let them know and show them that vision. Okay, so when it comes to budget, based on the roadmap that you put in place, you'll need to budget properly. Keep the two aligned. There certainly will be upfront costs, your time, your money to do the analysis. But it's money well spent in the sense of the time that you're putting into planning will decrease overall the overall project, right? So not having to go back, do a lot of repeats, or like I mentioned earlier, scenario of we implemented Salesforce, just not working, we got to trash it, and we want to move on to a whole nother system. You want to avoid that at all costs. So it's important to plan for, budgeting across phases. So you need to plan for analysis, plan for design, plan for implementation, plan for future upgrades of the project. Will you need support services? If so, plan for those. Your annual and reoccurring costs regarding software licensing. If you're layering any third-party products on, you'll want to plan that too. And that's kind of phase one. Then you got phase two. So set realistic budgets for first and then all future phases of CRM. All right, so I think we've officially closed out analysis. Hopefully, you've seen all that planning and upfront of what you should do. Now, We're going to build upon the findings and the work and the analysis, and we're going to add more detail and fine tune. So this is where we're jumping into system design. So for an analogy, if you're building a house, this would be your blueprint stage. You should start building you really shouldn't start building a house without having a detailed drawing set. And you shouldn't build your CRM without this design plan either. So we've moved officially from the what and the why to the how. And we can begin defining how the technology and processes will work in the CRM. Now, this topic could certainly be its own session, but I'm going to highlight kind of the pieces of what makes up system design. So here we're building upon the work in the analysis stage. We're getting more granular. What I mean by that is we're defining, let's say, we're going to take accounts, for instance, and we know we want to store accounts in Dynamics. Okay, what type of account structure are we going to need? Are we going to need a parent account, and are we going to have related children account? What do we need to capture on the account form? What do we want the form to look like? What fields are we going to have on the form? If we have a field that has an option set, what will those option set values be? So you can see that blueprint coming together. You're going to identify the configuration and custom coding that might be needed. Are we going to need workflows to support those business processes that we did in the analysis stage? Do we need automatic reminders going out? We want to document that. What kind of views do we want in the CRM? How will people look at the data? How do we need the, what have they articulated in the analysis of how they look at their customer data? We need to build those views out here. So we'll define that. We'll define what those look like. Sometimes we do screen mock-ups depending on the size of the project. You want to define your reporting and your dashboard needs here. If we're planning for any kind of data migration, which typically will come in a phase 1, data integration, typically in a phase 2 or 3 to another system, but you would define what that mapping looks like. How will the data pass back and forth? How will the data be inputted? You'll define your security requirements. What users will have access to what portions of the system? And finally, in system design is your testing and training plan. How will we roll this out to the organization? Are these going to be training sessions that we do online? Are they going to be recorded? Are we going to put them up on a portal? Are we going to do an in-house training? There's going to be a 4-hour session, a 2-hour session. What topics do we want to cover with each group? So we'll really define that. So this all gets put into like a master document and then sent to the project team. So this blueprint is provided to the project team for their approval prior to any type of implementation start. This detailed design will properly prepare the team for implementation and will ensure that we have constant alignment on goals. After design, too, you typically want to revisit your roadmap, timeline, and budget, because when you get into this nitty-gritty, just like the house that you were planning to build and it was 3 bedrooms, and all of a sudden now you realize you need 4, that changes the implementation scope. So you make adjustments where necessary and communicate those. Doing this process definitely helps because it keeps everyone on track. It's very well defined what is going to happen in the system, and it helps to eliminate scope creep as well because it's all contained within the documentation. So there is so much more, as kind of just highlighted right there, beyond, and I'm talking about here data migration and integration. But I do want to take a moment just to discuss that topic as part of design because I would say it's probably one of the biggest hurdles in a project that you will run into. It can be very time consuming, it can be expensive, and can dramatically impact the success of a project up or down. So here's some things that you want to ask yourself when it comes to data migration and integration. What do we need to migrate and why? Okay, and is it worth it? Does it make sense? For instance, an example of this is we have some data right now, but it's so dirty, so inaccurate, so old that we don't even know where to start cleaning it up. So do you want to migrate that data into a brand new CRM? Possibly not, right? Why would you put old junk data into a brand new system? Now, maybe your data's not in that bad of a state, but one of the things you want to keep in mind here is data cleanup is a big deal and probably one of the things that slows down a project the most. So don't underestimate the effort if you do plan a data migration to seed the system, is cleaning that up. And it's an effort that should really start beginning as soon as you know CRM is in your what and your why, right? And start cleaning that up to be ready for data migration. So what are we going to migrate? If we're integrating, that means we're going to integrate to a secondary system. One, should we integrate it? Is it worth the investment? Are we going to get enough out of that to make the configuration work worth it? Does that integration need to be both one-way or two-way? What system will be the record of truth? What data should update in the core system versus the secondary system? This needs to really be well thought out, and also plan for the validation and the testing of that as you move forward. A few other questions, should we migrate, integrate, and I think I touched upon these, will we maintain access to any legacy systems? So if we are pulling data out of a current system and adding that into CRM from a migration standpoint, what will you do with that legacy system? How many sources of data do we have? This is what we come across quite a bit. Oh, well, this salesperson has his Excel spreadsheet, and this person's saving everything in Outlook, and this person's saving all their notes in OneNote. Well, if we're going to use a centralized system, we got to pull all that together. Thus, that can be the time suck when you're in a project. You want to involve your subject matter experts when it comes to migration and integration. And as mentioned, if you are doing data cleanup, you need to start that plan ASAP. All right, so now we have moved from analysis to design to implementation. It's time to start building the house, or in this case, your CRM. So now we've officially moved into the build stage. Project implementation is where you will see your vision become a reality. This should be I think a lot of people think this is the hard part. We've already done the hard part. This should be very easy, straightforward if you've done a strong analysis and strong design. You're gonna, this is, like I said, if you're a contractor, you're taking that blueprint and you're building. But some things to keep in mind, develop, always still have a realistic timeline and tasks for your team as you move into implementation. Very clearly define the roles and the task assignments to team. Keep your team updated. And if you are using a partner, a lot of times the implementation will fall primarily on the partner. So it's good to have regular status meetings and then funnel that information out to the team, both leadership and users, of what is coming down the pipe. How far are we on the project? When will they start to be seeing changes in the system? When will they be trained? When will they be expected to use the system? When you're in project implementation, stick to the scope and the timeline. Be very stringent about this. You've planned the design, you're now building. It's not the time to make major changes. Save those as much as you can for a future phase unless it's like business critical. When we get to, the build is done and, we're ready for testing and go live, make sure that you have adequate people and time for user acceptance testing before this goes into a true go live situation and you're using this for business operations. This is critical, and it's an area that sometimes companies just don't realize the importance of. So really try to, as you're planning your project teams, plan for a good chunk of time for user acceptance testing prior to go live. And then start that training preparation as specified in the design. Okay, so next we're going to address the importance of training and communication. And this is true across all stages, especially when it comes to the topic of communication. And this is truly critical component of success in any project, and again, during all project stages. So what you want to do is communicate the big picture and business value to the users of CRM. Define what's in it for them. How will it make their job easier? Clearly define why you are doing this. How will this implementation be good for the company? And how it will be good for them? It's the what's in it for me. It's very important to define this and communicate this at every stage of the project. The next point, involve your team in the planning process and design. Change is hard. Let's be realistic, right? For many. But involving people in the project as much as possible before go live will help them to be more comfortable with the change. Do this by involving them in the process design planning and communicating with them regularly. Please, please don't let them learn about CRM for the first time when they sit down for a training session. This should be communicated, they should know it's coming so that they are comfortable. Show how it will help the team succeed. Be their cheerleader, especially if you fall into that project sponsor, project lead role, and anyone on the project team. Depending on the size of your project, it will sometimes be hard to maintain that momentum across these stages. So it'll be important to keep your team engaged and excited throughout. Your project champions also can help in this area. Make it easy. Build a system that is valuable and useful for users, and they will want to use it. Train and retrain the team. So when it comes to this part of the project that you're ready to train your teams, ideally training should be hands-on with all users having their own machine, or kind of dialing into a remote session and being able to play around on their version of the system. Create real-world scenarios for them to walk through the system so they can see how it relates to their day-to-day. Once a training has been concluded, it's easy to assume that everyone is comfortable with the system. Oftentimes people need to hear things more than once before they grasp the end goal. So continue nurturing the users after go live and check in with them regularly and welcome their feedback and suggestions. Also remember to train them when new system upgrades come out or you have change in your process. So some ways that you could provide ongoing user engagement, you could do online refresher trainings, kind of little 30-minute blocks on a topic, little lunch and learns maybe within the organization. Ask them for enhancement suggestions. Get involved in outside organizations such as the CRM UG, which is like if you're using Dynamics CRM, that's a community for Dynamics users. Or attend other conferences. Salesforce has tons of conferences out there too. Or encourage your teams to use online resources for ongoing education. All right, congratulations. You've made it to the last section of this presentation, and it does look like we'll wrap up a little bit earlier than an hour today, so I'll give you a few minutes back in your day. But let's take one more minute to wrap up the key points of CRM Success covered today. So during the analysis stage, you're going to select your project team, define your current processes, do your technology assessment, define the future state, the what and the why, and establish your roadmap and budget to get you there. Then you're going to move into the design stage, and this is our blueprint. We're going to document, review, and design that or approve that blueprint. We're going to also revisit the alignment with roadmap and budget to make sure we're still on track. Then we're moving into the build stage. Develop that project plan and stick to it. Make sure you stick to that timeline and scope that you've set. Spend that time in user acceptance testing. And then do solid admin and user training on an ongoing basis. And remember those 4 key attributes that hinges on project success: strong leadership, proper planning, ensuring user adoption, and adequate communication within your organization. All right, so I'm going to turn the webinar back over to Julia to wrap up today's session, but I thank you for attending today.
All right, thank you so much for the awesome presentation, Jody. There were a lot of great takeaways that I'm sure a lot of attendees can take right back to their organizations. As a reminder, today's webinar was recorded and we will be sending everyone a link to access this webinar on demand at your convenience anytime. I highly suggest forwarding it to your industry peers or even playing it during a CRM training session. We also encourage you to visit our website at ledgeviewpartners.com for additional on-demand resources that cover sales, marketing, customer service, CRM, and much more. We recently published 3 new ebooks, one being a master guide for driving growth with marketing automation and several new infographics. You'll especially love our new ebook, 10 Steps to a Successful CRM Implementation, which expands upon many of the topics covered in today's presentation. Check out other upcoming webinars we have going on at ledgeviewpartners.com when you click on News and Events. We're looking forward to connecting with you more and hope you're enjoying a fun and cool summer so far. Stay hydrated out there, and until next time,